What's going on, Meaning Makers? Keegan York here again for the next episode of the Meaning Makers Conversations. And today I have Alan Long. He's going to tell us a little bit about him, what he does, and why he does it. So, Alan, thanks for being on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, tell me just kind of briefly who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Sure. So I'm Alan Long. I'm the executive director of High Hopes Development Center, which is where we're at today. I've been in this position just about 2 years now. Keegan, the reason I'm here is, well, a couple of reasons, I guess, one personal, one not. 2 years ago, the former executive director, Gail Powell, after 15 years, she decided that she was going to retire. And I already had a familiarity with High Hopes because of the work they do in the education arena. And I had been here a couple of times. But when Gail announced her retirement, I didn't come seeking this position, but somebody from the board at High Hopes sought me out. Gail had mentioned me. And although they interviewed several people, I guess I'm the person that they ended up choosing to come be a part of High Hopes. So it wasn't a decision, I wasn't desiring, or I didn't have any desire to leave Lipscomb. I honestly thought I was going to retire from Lipscomb because my wife had worked at the university at one time. All four of our children were at the academy, and we had a great experience. And I thought it was fun to come back to Lipscomb, and although I thought that's where I was going to retire, God obviously had different plans. And the more I talked to the team here at High Hopes, I saw this as a perfect collision of my first almost 20 years in corporate HR and operations, and then my last, 12, 15, 16 years in education. I kind of, for lack of better words, call this High Hopes being a perfect collision of my corporate career and my education career. So I got to come here and not only still be in the education arena, but now I'm learning about what we do in a clinic, pediatric therapy for children. And then I also now have the opportunity to run a nonprofit. So there's the whole element of fundraising and development for an organization that has to be mission focused and on point to be able to be successful. So I've enjoyed being in education, learning about clinic and therapies and the different types of therapies, and then kind of layering on top of that this whole idea of being a nonprofit and serving the families that need what we have to offer.
Yeah, could you explain for someone who doesn't know what High Hopes is?
Sure.
What is High Hopes?
Yeah. So High Hopes is a nonprofit. We are physically based in Franklin, but High Hopes has been around. We're actually celebrating 40 years this year.
Wow.
We started in 1984, and we located in downtown Nashville. And High Hopes really was established because there were 5 families who found themselves kind of running this circuit in Nashville. All 5 families had children, and they became familiar with each other because they were enrolling their children in preschools in Nashville, but throughout the day where they would run into each other was at pediatric therapy clinics because their children needed therapy. And anybody who knows something about this will completely agree with the fact that early intervention for children who need therapy is critical. It is key. The earlier a child receives a diagnosis for some type of, and they need therapy, the better off they are, the more successful they're going to be as they get older. So these 5 families essentially said, well, hey, I see you at so-and-so, and you're running there, and I'm bringing my kid to this therapy, but I saw you at this preschool, but I take my kids to that preschool. So Keegan, these 5 families essentially said, wouldn't it be amazing if we integrated these services and under one roof, our children could go to preschool and receive therapy at the same time or in the same building as part of their day? So obviously over 40 years, we've refined that a little bit, but the mission is still the same. And so here at High Hopes, we, under one roof, we have a preschool, but we also have this pediatric therapy clinic. So if a child in our preschool needs therapy, the therapist can literally just walk over from the clinic, still all under the same roof. They can either push into the classroom and provide the therapy for that child, or if the therapist needs to bring the child back over to the clinic, they can do that. At the end of the day, all the family had to do was drop their child off at preschool.
Yeah.
And when they pick them up, not only have they gone to preschool, but they have may received one, maybe two therapies in a day, and in a given week, they may have received 3 or 4 different therapies. So we integrate those services for families because many times they don't have any relief. And imagine, especially families where the mom and the dad are both working outside the home, for them to stop, for at least one of them to have to stop and go, oh, I have to go get my child at preschool. I have to run them across town. I have to go to a 45-minute to an hour therapy session and then bring them back. There are some employers who won't allow that to happen. There are others who will, but imagine if you had to stop in the middle of your day to take your child to therapy. You would do it because that's your child, but it disrupts the day. And not only does it disrupt the day for the parent, but imagine how it disrupts the day for that child who, in the middle of their school day, somebody shows up and says, oh, come with me. We got to go across town for therapy. So in our clinic, we currently provide 4 types of therapy. So we provide feeding, speech language, occupational and physical therapy. We have just started introducing behavioral therapy. We don't have the program fully functioning yet. We're evaluating what those needs are. So soon, we're very excited. We know we're going to be able to offer behavioral therapy as well. Behavior has become even a bigger issue for families, especially since COVID. I think it has just really exposed the needs of children and families related to behavior. So we know there's a need out there, and we are excited that I think we're going to be on the cutting edge of what it looks like to offer behavior therapy in a clinic like ours. So one other thing I probably should add for people who don't know what High Hopes is about. So your listeners are probably thinking, okay, so they're a preschool. Yes, in many ways, we are a preschool. I kid. This is tongue-in-cheek. I say we, in many ways, look, smell, and feel just like any other preschool. So imagine a preschool. But what makes High Hopes unique is that we are an inclusive preschool, and we know that that is a model that works the best for children. So in our preschool, if you were to come in, you would see children that are typically developing, working and learning right alongside children who have some type of therapy need that they're going to grow out of. They aren't diagnosed with some type of special need. They just need therapy. And then we do have children in our preschool who do have some type of diagnosis. There may be a developmental delay. There may be a special need. They may be neurodiverse. And we love it when all of those children come together and they all learn in the same space. It's their preschool, and they don't know any different. And so High Hopes, not only do we provide those therapies and we have a preschool, right? But we are doing something for those children that children in other preschools and other learning environments will never get. They are immersed in the same classroom with children that are similar to and very different from them. So we prepare them very well for kindergarten, where those children with special needs, they know better how to advocate for themselves, and they have been pushed because those peers right next to them who are typically developing, they want to run right with them. They're like, hey, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then for those children who are typically developing, they have greater compassion for their friends with special needs, and they will be the first ones to step up, and they will advocate for their friend with special needs. So really cool environment in the preschool. And then lastly, in the clinic, we don't just serve our children in the preschool who have some type of therapeutic need. Just full disclosure, we are also a full-blown outpatient pediatric therapy clinic. So if your child stays at home with a parent, or if they do go to another preschool, we certainly welcome them here, and those families will just simply, they will come for a 45-minute therapy session. They may just have one session with us, or they may have multiple different therapies with us. So on the clinic side, at the end of any given week, we will have provided over 600 45-minute pediatric therapy sessions. Wow. And that is done by about 30 to 35 therapists. On the preschool side, on any given day, we max out at about 119 children. So, and then just bring that all together. Some people say, well, what do you do by the end of the year? By the end of the year, we will have worked with, either in the preschool or the clinic, about 1,000 unique children. Wow. In the clinic or in the school.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's, we are mission focused. Our mission here is to equip children, youth, and their families with the skills necessary for success through three things: education, pediatric therapy, and loving support.
You mentioned COVID. As a educator, especially for younger kids, what's the differences you see maybe pre-COVID and post-COVID in their learning development, their behaviors? Because you mentioned the behavior therapy is something new you want to integrate. Yeah. So could you explain the differences you've seen?
Keegan, that's a loaded question, and I don't have this figured out, and I can't sit here and say, oh man, I've done all this research, and this is what's different about behavior now post-COVID. But what I think all of us have seen and what we have learned is COVID, it affected all of our beings. I don't know if that makes sense, but we are in our preschool, we are dealing with those children who were born during that COVID era. So that was 4 years ago. Those are our pre-K children right now. Oh. And children that are even just a little bit younger than them, our whole way of going about things has changed because of COVID. We're more insulated, we're more isolated, we don't find ourselves around other people and interacting socially as much as we did. Mm-hmm. So especially for those 4-year-olds who were born during that time, it's clear that they didn't have those social interactions, and that's a part of their development. Mm-hmm. They need that. So I think just that isolation, that being insulated, everybody staying at home, they don't touch, everybody use antiseptic, everything. It just changed how kids go about learning and growing. And so in the classroom environment where these children now come together, learning how to interact with each other, learning how to play, learning how to argue, mm-hmm. learning how to converse, and that's my block, not your block. Well, how can we play with these blocks together? Behaviors have just really, concerning behaviors have become pronounced, and it saddens us, but we want to be a part of the solution. We want to do something about that. So we were fortunate. High Hopes wrote a grant a few years ago around behavior and behavior therapy. We were awarded that grant. So it afforded us the opportunity about a year ago to hire our first BCBA, board certified behavior analyst. Bonnie is her name. And she, even though she doesn't have a caseload yet, just her presence around here and being able to help us when she sees behaviors, she can come up alongside a teacher and offer suggestions if the teacher is open to that, or lean over to the teacher, or even myself sometimes as the executive director, and say, hey, can I tap you out? Do you mind if I try my hand at this. So behaviors can be big, they can be concerning, and we are so fortunate that there are people out there who are able to identify these things and work with them so that they're set on a path for success, and that child doesn't have to struggle with that behavior as they get into their elementary school years.
Yeah. I want to zoom out a little bit. As far as lifespan goes, you have a couple of kids who are older. What sorts of behaviors do you see in your preschoolers that you also see in the 23 to 33 range? And how do you think the difference in that behavior change looks? How do you think someone wanting to change a habit changes it with your preschooler perspective?
Keegan, what immediately comes to mind, so what's the same, right? Let's start with that. What do I see in preschoolers here that I also see in my own adult children, right?
Yeah.
Is that, okay. Yeah. Everything is just, I must have it now. It is instant gratification. The idea of waiting for something is foreign to this generation. It's not it can be the parents' fault, but it's just, I think it's the society we find ourselves living in, right? Everything is right in front of us. We can have it now. We're taught that we should have it all, and we should have it now. And I love my 4 kids, but honestly, they didn't have to wait for a lot. Yeah. And I was a part of that.
The Amazon same-day shipping was not a thing when I was a kid, at least. So
yeah, right. So I see that in these children as well, and that just comes back to how critical it is for us to sometimes look at these children and know is the best answer we could give them because we love them. Either no, you're never going to get it, or no, you're going to wait. Or even better, well, yes, you can have that, but you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to earn your way to whatever it is you want. And I don't see that changing much in the near future. It's a symptom of the society we live in, I think. Keegan, I don't think that was the whole question you asked. I may have gotten off there a little bit. Go back and...
The no kind of got there. The second part of the question was, how do you think you changed that behavior?
How do we change that behavior?
So that instant gratification.
It will take, hindsight's always 20/20, right? And I was just saying this to a younger couple. I think it was yesterday. We were talking about these terrible beasts right here, our iPhones. They are a necessary evil, for lack of better words. And I found myself telling this young couple who just had a child, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't. All 4 of our children had iPhones in middle school. I think we started giving them to them in 5th grade. I know that sounds terrible. If I had a do-over, they would not have it till their freshman year in high school. If used right, if used properly, it can be a great tool to leverage efficiency, to gather and get information, share information. But children don't have that capability. And also as a former elementary school teacher of 4th and 5th graders, I saw the immediate damage it was doing to my students. And it's kind of like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Once you give a child that iPhone, you're never going to get it back from them. You can't. I think that's just one example. How we undo that is parents, please have the ability to look at your child and say, son or daughter, I love you enough. This is going to hurt, but I love you enough to say no. And someday you'll know why I said that. We all have woulda, coulda, shouldas and wish we had a do-over. That's a big do-over. And I think for parents who really want the best for their children, hold off on some of that technology. A lot of times, even my wife and I use this as an excuse. Well, they need to call mom and dad. They need to be able to call mom and dad, and I need to know what their location is. Well, if you know where your children are to start with, if they're in a safe environment, they're probably going to be with adults, and every adult that they're with probably has one, if not more, iPhones with them, or personal, whatever you call it, Android. They're going to be able to call mom and dad. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, delay the technology.
Yeah, the idea of thinking long-term, bigger picture for the sake of denying the short-term. It's kind of what I heard there.
Yeah.
But there is that FOMO and anxiety around it of I don't want to miss out, or I don't want to miss the call, or what if they need me? And as a parent,
and I don't want my children to miss out, right? I don't want them to be the only one without that. I know we're talking about technology.
You don't want to be
when
the
I
weird
was
kids.
a kid, when I was in middle school, I didn't want to be the only one not wearing a pair of Levi 550s, button fly jeans. It was that, you wanted to look, you wanted to feel like everybody else. That's culturally and just, that's kind of how we're wired. Yeah. But I truly admire parents who have that ability to say no, because their children are going to grow up a lot further ahead in the long run.
Yeah, you can see even in our 3-year-old the difference when he's had screen time versus when he hasn't had screen time. And like his screen time, I think it used to be like 2 hours a day around meals. Now it's like one 30-minute episode every other day, every 3 days. But even like if he gets a little bit more, you can tell the difference in his behavior. And it's crazy.
And Keegan, you nailed it. What did we just go back to? The word you just used is behavior. Now, I'm not saying all technology is bad and technology leads to bad behaviors, but if left to their own devices, that child is not going to get off that piece of technology.
Yeah. I think that's what they're designed to do, right? Like you said, it's a great tool for sharing and getting information, but the things that people use it for, I think of Cocomelon and how they did a study about how Cocomelon is one of the most addictive substances in the world due to its ability it was created in its sequencing and its colors and its sounds to transition every 2 to 3 seconds so the kids always get that quick dopamine fire.
Yes.
And so it's literally the most addicting thing out there because kids are just watching it and it's messing with their behavior, messing with their mindset, messing with even just the chemicals inside of them. So yeah, the people creating on the technology, we don't always know what the reasons they're creating it are and what they want from us.
Yeah,
so you're right, the kids, when they see it, they don't know that.
Right. Yeah, and the designers of it, the designers of the technology and the creators of the apps and everything that's on there, that's exactly what they want, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's up to the parents to control that.
We're in an election year, and talking about that just made me think about this. Yeah. And the idea that not everything you read on Twitter or see on Instagram or see on the news is always going to be catered to make sure that you get the true information.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on how you develop critical thinking at such a young age for kids, or how you developed it in your own kids to see things as objective as opposed to exactly what it is on the paper.
Yeah. So critical thinking, a skill that we probably aren't. I'm thinking here back to the preschool. We're not necessarily, and in my role, I'm not focused on teaching critical thinking, but I do think about my own children. And then when I was a 4th and 5th grade teacher, that critical thinking skill was a prime time to develop that in these students. And it is kind of a tie-in here to what we were just talking about. So we have to move beyond that instant gratification and just accepting the first thing that we see that we put into a Google search bar, right? So it is working alongside these young individuals to teach them how to consider different resources, and not just resources that are online. They may find it online, but it may be a resource that was originally in a book or a journal, something like that. To have that individual consider different resources, compare them to each other, have good, meaty conversations with other individuals. So it's not just based on conclusions based on what they read and what they heard, but what they read, what they researched, and what they discussed with other individuals. And then on top of all that, to take, within reason, as much time as you need to just kind of rest on all that information and let it sit there for a little bit before you draw conclusions and you reach your decision about whatever the topic is that's being discussed or debated. I don't know. I think if you had to set all that aside, the one thing I would say is the more we can subject young people to reading different just books, articles, stuff online, even when they're young, comics, there's good lessons to be taught in comic books. To just subject children to all different kinds of literature so that they develop an appreciation and a love for that. And it doesn't just go back to, well, I need to hear it or I need to see it on Google and that's it. That's a very scary place to find our information.
Yeah. I like that idea of the pause.
Yeah.
There's always a pause, and Viktor Frankl, in I think it's Man's Search for Meaning, he has the quote that in between every idea and action, there's a space. And in that space, we get to choose how we react to everything. And I think we've kind of missed that as a society in some ways.
Yeah. Well said. It lets things settle a little bit, right? Before even making decisions. Many, many years ago, a mentor of mine, his name was Dr. Glenn Starner. He has long since passed away. He was director or vice president of student life at Central Michigan University, where I did my undergraduate degree. And we were at a conference. I was president of a student organization, and a pretty bad, concerning situation occurred between two of our attendees at the hotel one evening. And we had to make a decision about what we were going to do with one of these two individuals. And it was about 2 a.m. And I found myself in Dr. Starner's hotel room. And the two of us are talking about this, and I'm pretty revved up and I'm rattled. And I just kept saying to him, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he said, Alan, let me ask you a question. He said, where are both of these individuals right now? And I said, well, they're both back in their hotel rooms. And he said, they're separate hotel rooms? I said, yes. He goes, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Why don't you go get some rest? And he said, we'll talk about this over breakfast at 7 a.m. And you know what? I woke up, I met him for breakfast, and the answer was very clear. It needed a pause. I was not at my best. I still didn't have all the information, and sometimes we just need a pause.
Yeah, emotions are very good to feel, but they are terrible decision makers.
Yeah. Yes.
The fools always jump in quicker than the wise person. Do you think, going back to your job, do you think that this job that you're doing, is this your purpose? Is that still developing, or how do you develop your purpose?
Well, I think it is, but just recently, a couple of different people said, Alan, this is not going to be your last stop. I'm like, okay, I'm getting closer to 60. I'm thinking this is my last stop. And they said, well, okay, maybe it'll be my last stop, like where I
get paid to do it.
I get paid, yeah. That's still a concern to me. But I said, yeah, I'm sure I will still do something. Yes, this is my purpose. And that is, it has never changed. Even, I can go back remembering a connection to this, Keegan, when I was about 15 years old. When I was 15, I wanted to be a classroom teacher. I wanted to teach in elementary school. And I could clearly articulate to my mother why I wanted to be a teacher, because I wanted to have lasting impact on other people. And I could do that through teaching them, through not just teaching subjects, but having influence on those children, on those, I wanted to teach elementary school. I wanted a way to impact the heart and the head both. And I always admired my teachers. I saw what they poured into me. And the other reason that I wanted to do that is because I was one of four. My parents never made it to college. And one of my siblings tried, but none of them ever graduated. They are highly successful today. I admire my siblings. I just chose a different route, right? And I knew, I just knew there was such value and power in education. And not only did I want it for myself, but I wanted to be able to someday pass that on to others. Well, very clearly remember my mother saying when I told her this, and we were actually in the old 1970-something Ford Country Squire station wagon driving home, and I worked up enough nerve to tell my mother I think I was a sophomore, freshman or a sophomore. Mom, I think I want to go to college and I want to learn to be a teacher. And Keegan, I remember my mom, I love her to death. My mom didn't know any different, but I remember my mom grabbing the steering wheel and look at me and go, I don't know, do you think you could do that? And I watched my mother's reaction and it just poured water on my fire. It completely doused. And I doused it and I thought, well, if mom doesn't think I can do it, I guess I can't do it. Maybe I can't even go to college. It must be so incredibly hard. Well, I did end up going to college, but that conversation with me was so critical. I changed my decision. I went into business. And Keegan, I loved it. I was very successful in business for almost 20 years in operations and HR, and I worked for other organizations, not for myself. I learned a lot. I love the people that I worked with. But even in those almost 20 years, for 20 years, I did not feel like I was reaching deep into the hearts of the people that I was working with. And warp speed ahead, I've been married for 26 years to an incredible lady. Her name is Charla. And it was that we had been married. I don't know. All my dates and timelines are getting mixed up, but it was well into our marriage. And Charla's the one that said, you are going to put all this behind you and you're going to go back to school and do what God called you to do. So I went back to school. I got another master's. This time it was master's in curriculum instruction and design. I had the MBA already, and I started doing what I really wanted to do, and that was impact. That was my purpose. Back to your question. My personal purpose is very much aligned with the mission and the purpose of High Hopes, and that is impacting the lives of others for the rest of their life in a very meaningful way.
Yeah. Do you feel any regret over those 20 years as far as not pursuing your purpose?
The first,
the business?
Not at all. No, not at all. Great question, and I'm glad you followed up with that. I've said to others who ask me, why did you leave corporate for teaching? You're not even paid close to what you used to be making. But I go, but what it fills in here, you can't get outside of education. You will never, that payback is in here. And you see those people that you have, hopefully in a positive way, impacted for the rest of their lives, you have poured into them in such a meaningful way. But no, I am thankful for those first almost 20 years because it prepared me. I enjoy business. I love strategy. I enjoyed human resources, but Keegan, I couldn't ever get to that point of spending enough time with individuals and investing in individuals. And every time I did, it was like, okay, it's time to move on to the next person or the next initiative, or, we're going to ditch that initiative and we're going to go do this. And I'm like, but wait, I really, like, there's such potential there. I want to work with that person. And there was never enough time. But there was also a bottom line that we had to answer to. There were stockholders, there were private owners, and I respected that. They were in business to make money, and sometimes the pace of that business logically can't allow you to take all that time and pour into those individuals. So I knew, like, that is all good. I needed to find another profession where I could really do what I wanted to do. And that was pour into people. And I could do that in teaching, in education. I know what I was going to say earlier. I say it's funny because I love education because I can pour into people, but we live in a capitalistic society. And in 4th and 5th grade, I am teaching those things for them to be successful in a capitalistic society. So I would never say, oh yeah, working in business and HR and operations is terrible, it's silly, it's ridiculous, teaching is the way to go. We need both. We live, like, this is what we're educating our children to live in and be successful at, is in a capitalistic society. So I got to teach those things that I had learned so well for almost 20 years in business. I got to teach it in the classroom, and it came very easy to me.
Yeah, capitalism almost feels similarly to technology, and how the point is to provide value to make money in a free market. The more value you provide, the more opportunity to make more money. However, you don't stop there. If you want it to be a good vehicle, you then take that, turn around, and pour into other people.
Yeah.
So I almost see that turn that you took to get back to your purpose. And most of my audience, I think, is about 20 to 40, kind of that range, just based on different trends. And I get a sense that a lot of them aren't doing what they want to be doing. They're not pursuing their purpose. And I think it's okay to slow down and know that even if it's not now, maybe 5 years from now, you'll get that push from the right person to do it.
You have got, so well said, surrounding yourself with the right people who will encourage you, who will be your advocates, who will be your cheerleaders, who will be the ones to push you, even when it doesn't feel good to be pushed, to have those people around you. Like for me, it was my wife, right? She gave me that push. It is absolutely critical. That right circle around you will get you there. And yeah, you've got to be doing something that does define you and define your purpose. Yeah.
How do you develop a circle that pushes you like that? Because we don't all have a Charla, and I know Charla a little bit, and she's not one to be shy about telling you what she thinks.
Your circle has to be made up of people with integrity who are going to be the ones who love you enough and care about you enough to tell you when you're screwing up and to tell you when you're not doing what you're called to do. And because I have young adults, I'm going to say this, that circle of influence, it's not going to be found at the bar. And I am disappointed by the fact that that's where so many people find themselves at. You said your audience is 20 to 40 years old. It is not at the bar. It's where you worship. And if you're not a person of faith, it's somewhere, I don't know where that is. Like, maybe it is a group from your workplace, or if you play sports, intramural sports or rec leagues or whatever, find that group that is going, and surround yourself with the people that are going to make you better. church, sports, volunteering in nonprofits like High Hopes, sitting on a board, you will find yourself naturally attracting those people who will make you a better person. It is absolutely critical.
Yeah, you're not going to find your close people who are going to push you positively in the same places where you're trying to medicate all of your disappointments,
Yeah.
all of your problems.
Yeah.
You're going to find it where you go to actually give back, I've found.
Yep.
Because you're playing, you're giving your energy towards something. You're at church, you're worshiping, you're giving your energy towards something. Volunteering, you're giving your time.
I mean,
Family,
look-
you're giving everything to. And that's where you find it, is when you give.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, it's interesting. People who volunteer, they feel so good once it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Those people all have something in common. They like to give to others. There's something good in those people.
Yeah.
Those are good people. That's where you find, those are the kinds of places you find the people you want to surround. People that are better than you.
Yeah, I have kind of coined a formula for what makes a meaningful experience. And I think it's a intentional purpose with a shared experience. And that's an experience with other people, an experience with nature, with God, whatever it may be. It's an intentional purpose to serve other people, to volunteer, and you're sharing it with other people. Therefore, it's meaningful.
Yep.
And
that shared experience. Yeah.
And that's where you find your group, because you hark back when you hang out with them again about, man, that was so cool that we did that.
Keegan, one other thing I would add to that is, and this kind of ties back to COVID in our society, how just more and more we are becoming insulated. And, we can go to McDonald's, we can order a whole meal and never talk to a person, right? And we can sit at the booth and do it all alone. We have to be, as humans, we have to be aware of that, and we have got to push ourselves outside the comfort zone. We must converse with others. We have to relate and interact. Without that, we're not going to find that circle of influence.
Yeah, when you're comfortable, when you do comfortable things, you feel worse. And when you do uncomfortable things, you feel better.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting how that happens. Like working out, you're making your muscles uncomfortable, and they literally tear with the resistance you're providing it, and therefore it grows.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that we do in any sphere of life. We grow when we push our boundaries of fear. And I think with video games, with COVID being, we're 4 years pretty much removed from COVID, so now it kind of feels like an excuse more than a reality.
Yeah.
But that idea of stay home and do what you like in the moment has now transversely made more people more depressed. Suicide rates are going up. Anxiety rates are going up. People's meaningful activities and feeling meaning in life has gone down.
Yep.
So it's just kind of a
Mental
storm.
health issues have just escalated. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to have the context, because our pastor at our church always says context provides clarity, and clarity gives us the confidence in our answers that we need to then go out and serve other people. And so having that context, I can see why people would feel like their life kind of feels meaningless, like there isn't a lot of purpose to it. Maybe I'm not doing what I want. I just go to my 9 to 5 and leave. So, and social media. There's all these big entrepreneurs now that even they'll preach like, hey, this is not as easy as it looks, but they flash the nice cars, the fancy watches. So then it makes someone else feel like, man, maybe I'm not doing enough. But then you have to get down to what is enough.
And we think that's reality, what we see. That is their defined reality. And we feel like we have to get there, but we never get there, right? And we can't figure out how to get there. It's like, I say to my own kids when I catch them taking a picture of the meal they're about to eat, and I say, oh yeah, that's right. It never happened if it doesn't go on social media. Why do we need to put our meal on social media?
I think you're just catching on.
Because we got to make sure others see it and show, like we would never admit it, right? But I want to show everybody else that I've got it all figured out and it's the coolest, and this is the best meal, or I look the best, or like, that's all we're doing it for. And then others watch it and they go, wow, I want to be just like that. No, you don't.
Yeah.
It's not like that 24 hours a day.
Hey, due to a technical error in the video, we weren't able to actually continue on the video portion of the podcast. But if you want to, you can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, both linked below, and you can listen to the rest of the episode. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited for what's to come. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe so you can be up to date on the next videos. Thanks.